Well, hello. I'm Marty Spence. I'm an expert lifestyle and health redesign guide, and I believe in magic. I believe in miracles. So in this series, Real Health Right Now, we talk about those simple lifestyle changes that can be dynamic in your life. And so I'm hoping to take you all on a journey and tell you a little bit about how I got well. I believe that the body can heal itself. Like it's mind-blowing what our body is capable of doing. We are amidst a healthcare crisis, and it's so much bigger than any cold or flu. We have a chemical compound problem of codependency. Right now, we are products of just poor programming. It's not our fault. I don't want anyone to feel like this is a fault thing. So somewhere along the way, we stopped trusting our health. Majority best practice continues to endorse reaching for those Band-Aids to treat symptoms. I think what they're asking me to do out there to protect my health is not at all easy, because it defies what I already know to be best practice. We spend as a country trillions of dollars on what is deemed health care, but it is sick care at best. And so when we start talking about health, we need to start encompassing this idea of alternative health care as primary health care. And so we can't put a Band-Aid over this one. We're not getting out of this. We're going through this one. We have to, because if we don't go through it, then we're not going to be able to get well. Nobody gets well until we get well inside of our bodies on our own in a sovereign state. It is fixable. It is absolutely fixable. All of these root causes have a solution, and Mama Gaia, Earth has the antidote. Solution is simple. It seems hard, but it's not. Real health is not that far away. It's within reach, and you have to want it, and it's really simple. We have the power to be the experts in our health. So we need to take that back and start believing in ourselves, because we live in our bodies every single day. And when we live there and we take time there to take a self-inquiry, total personal inventory of what's going on, we're usually right.
Hey everyone, it's Joey from the Reality Practice Network. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned after the show and find out how you can work one-on-one with your show host as they guide you through this process of ascension. Until then, enjoy the show.
I'm so excited to be here with you, friends. Welcome to Real Health Right Now. I am excited to be here with my dear friend, Dr. Garrett. You have navigated some pretty insane health situations by my side the past few years, from my mother to my young children, and even myself. I consider you a health expert in regards to what our foundational health is. And I am really ecstatic to be here talking to you about how functional medicine plays into our day-to-day. So I want to give you some space to talk about how you arrived here, and where you came from with your wisdoms.
Cool. Okay. Well, I've had quite an interesting journey. My goal has always been trying to figure out how to solve problems. And so, that kind of led me to kind of where I am now. And I have 4 postdoctoral diplomates. I have 2 in clinical nutrition, 1 in functional medicine, 1 in integrative medicine. I'm chairman of the board of directors of the American Board of Functional Medicine, the American Academy of Functional Medicine. I sit on a bunch of other boards. Basically, if you do a lot of work, you can get on a lot of boards.
No.
And then I've had, 17 years of clinical practice. I've treated patients from everything from reversing fatal genetic disorders to reversing Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, eczema, psoriasis, asthma, allergies. So typically, I'm the person that they go to after they've tried every specialist, every medication, and the Mayo Clinic, and then they're like, what's that guy's name again? And then they come to see me. Because we make lifestyle changes, and then people don't want to do that in the beginning, right?
Right. It's harder to make the changes
Yeah.
than it is
Then,
to take the pill. I hear what they're saying. It's tough.
and I also have researched at NIH research for proteogenomic psychiatry at KU Medical School, where we're studying genetic pathways and how that affects hard to treat patients. And I have patients all around the world. Like, it's the craziest thing because I just do my thing, and you're like, how did you get referred to me from Saudi Arabia or, you know, from Africa or India?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. But, and then I've been an international and national lecturer of top doctors for years. The last, I think, lecture I did was I was a keynote speaker at the International Symposium of Health and Wellness in Bangkok, Thailand.
Wow.
And that was really an awesome honor to be flown to the other side of the planet to speak for an hour. Like, that's pretty.
Yeah,
pretty,
kudos. That's wonderful. Your knowledge is vast.
So otherwise, one of the kind of things that I do that's a little bit different too, even though I do, I used to teach postdoctoral functional medicine classes, time anatomy and physiology for 7 years. But I took coursework from Harvard Medical School years ago. I postgrad from Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Melbourne for epigenetics. But Harvard was the one that changed everything because they offered this unique program called lifestyle medicine. And they haven't offered it since. And so I just got this really unique opportunity to go through their program. And it was lifestyle medicine. It was basically the only coursework I've ever taken that said, patient has this disease. What did they do to cause it? Teach them to stop causing it.
Wow.
And for the most part, you never see coursework like that. That's how I taught functional medicine. But otherwise, you don't get that because pretty much it's all how to manage. Management is where money is. So manage it with drugs, manage it with a bunch of supplements, do more and more expensive comprehensive lab tests. But when you look at the world's healthiest, happiest, longest living populations and some of the biggest, strongest animals, it's really not that complicated. So for the last, maybe 10 years, I've been practicing functional lifestyle medicine. So kind of functional medicine, but with a lifestyle core, which is know how the body works, know what we do to mess it up, teach people stop messing it up. That's the simplicity.
It's not that hard. It's a formula, folks.
Right.
It's broken. We can't treat it like that. How do we fix it?
Yeah. And essentially, like
talking about today, so much of how do we arrive here. That's fantastic. So they don't teach that class anymore.
No, they don't, because I loved, kind of like, oh yeah, at Harvard we learned this, and at Harvard, but they're always like, well, can I take those courses? No, you can't.
About that.
So
no.
Honestly, it should be taught as a standard. But
economics, physical, foundational health, lifestyle, from the ground up, this is how we care for our health. So many of us are missing that element of our self-care. I mean, we're talking self-care is, about maybe pampering ourselves. Now we're finding out it's even more than that. It's not just about taking the time to, go take 30 minutes to go for a walk, but it's really much bigger than that. It's a sovereign style of care for ourselves and reestablishing ourselves in the area of our own health experts is where we start with that. So that's something that I know is a passion project of yours, empowering people in their health. And so since you've crossed over into lifestyle and functioning medicine, how has that changed how you treat patients?
Like everything. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way to practice because, we have a 95 to 100% success rate of reversing the things that are irreversible. And we do it pretty much without supplements or medications. It's just, stop causing these problems. And so it's about knowing, really, I've this huge journey of education, but really it's to know what the simplicity is and not to get overwhelmed by the complexities, right? So, we live in a country now where 52, the journal, New England Journal of Medicine, there was a Washington School of Medicine research that came out and was published. And it said that 52% of all diagnosis and treatment in the United States is incorrect. So it's misdiagnosis,
52%?
mistreatment.
That's
50,
more than half. Like, that's
yeah,
alarming, right? That I feel like if we're anything over 50%, we're no longer neutral. We're in the other side. We
right.
can do that and not do that.
Well, and the crazy thing is, so for upper respiratory, it was 92% accuracy. I have a cough, sore throat, runny nose, upper respiratory. But only 92% of the doctors got that. 8% had no clue or misdiagnosed. But if you look at like GI conditions, which is about 50% of conditions that doctors see now, the accurate diagnosing of that was 38%, which means 62% of the time it's a misdiagnosis, it's a mistreatment.
Meaning they got it wrong. Meaning they got the wrong. Like, if there was a right answer and a wrong answer, 62% of the time they got the wrong one. And we're going there and we're going, fix me, even though you get F's on tests.
Right.
Okay.
And
Great.
so our culture, even, you know, in practice, or say in clinical clerkships, so I took 3,500 hours of clinical rounds, and, you know, you have your clinical mentors and things like surgery and family practice and all those. Surgery was easy. Yeah, they complain about it, just chop it out. When in doubt, cut it out. That's fine, right?
You know, good. I've heard
Got gallbladder problems. Now you don't have a gallbladder. But
that's problematic. We'll get to that. That's problematic. Missing body parts is a problem.
Yeah. You
I
know, you
would
have all
have a
these
car that
extra
was
parts.
missing part. I wouldn't. And they have us out here just driving around. No appendix. They take our gallbladders. They take our kidneys out. They're like, it's fine.
It's all fine. You got extra
I don't really
parts.
know what it's for. So it's okay.
So yeah, and like when they looked at like the metrics of that, like all through these rounds, it's always top 3. And so if you do a good history and physical, you have about a 97% chance of accurate diagnosis and treatment. But the average patient, according to that research, was the average patient is interrupted within the first 18 seconds. A tentative diagnosis is made within 2 minutes of that conversation, and within 5 minutes, most patients have their diagnosis, and prescription are out the door, right? Because we went from like a healthcare quality care thing to a how many people can we pack within this amount of time, and everything's insurance based, so I can't help you if your tire is almost bald and about to explode. When it explodes, come on in, we'll get you fixed up after your car's flipped over on the highway and stuff, you know. But the whole model that we created, especially since 1970, has really created this system where it's super unfair to patients, and they're mostly getting misdiagnosed. And that's a crazy thing. So we literally have patients that come in with polycystic ovarian as their diagnosis. It's polycystic. So you do an ultrasound, and if you see a bunch of cysts on the ovaries, it's polycystic. But they will have a lot of them no ultrasound. It's just like within 5 minutes, sounds like right at diagnosis. Here's your diagnosis. So we get an ultrasound, and there's no cysts. It's a total misdiagnosis. But we'll actually have patients that have ultrasounds that say there is no cysts and still end up with the diagnosis because it sounds right. So there's no history, there's no physical, there's no real time spent with patients. Like I spent an hour, and my friend was like, you got to spend less time, you got to spend less time, you got to see more patients. So I tried to cut it down to half an hour. I can't get through. Americans are one of the sickest, fattest populations with the most anxiety and depression. You can't get through 30 to 60 chronic issues within 30 minutes, let alone make sustainable changes.
I mean, what is the average chronically that you see? One person walks around with how many ailments on average?
So we do a really thorough history and physical. So it's like tell me everything you're eating, drinking, peeing, pooping, sleeping, stressing, from head to toe, every symptom's falling apart, right?
I remember. And
the average patient is about 30 to 60 chronic issues. 30 to 60. And I asked my friend who's the ARP, she's a nurse practitioner, I was like, how do you deal with all these things? And she said, you get one thing. You got one thing, and you got about 5 minutes. What do you want to talk about? I was like, well, what about all the other things?
Oh.
So patients are just really being kind of like set up to fail within our practice now. Or my practice.
Right, not your practice, but in the practice. And I just want to go back to the words practice and patience. Practice and patience. I feel like it's so obvious, and yet we miss the things right in front of us, that this is a practice. And we've only been doing modern medicine for how many hundreds of years? Not even
Right.
a couple hundred. Like, we're really, really new here. And so it's not too late to turn back and to go back and look at this lifestyle redesign, because I loved when I visited your office. You have this life-size, this wall full of what you described as a chain link fence, like the hexagons and all the formulas of what makes up a human. And I asked you what that was, and you said that's a human being. That's what makes a human being. And it was complex, and yet it's not. You're like, it's not. The way you explained it to me was it was like a chain link fence, and if even one is broken, you just have to mend that and then go to the next one. And you just made it seem so easy. And I love that, because it really should be.
Well, and that comes from teaching anatomy and physiology for 7 years. How to explain really complex things in the most simple forms. But yeah, that chart is every biochemical process in the body, every biochemical pathway. And it was developed by Roche Labs. It's like 3 foot by 5 foot. But when you look at it, every pathway is just ingredients from food. That's all it is. We are literally food that eats food to support our biochemistry. So we're biochemistry that eats biochemistry that supports biochemistry. But that's it. If you eat a salad, that salad literally becomes a human. Your baby was 100% created from food ingredients. That's the craziest thing, because they don't teach us that in school.
They don't tell us that at all. I don't remember that at all being part of our health classes.
Yeah.
In fact, looking back, there are very few pieces from health class that I use. In fact, that is one class I do go back to when looking at vitamins and minerals. And you helped me on that journey of self-discovery, trying to figure out what was broken in there so that I could try to replenish, and now to be able to live my best life in a body they told me that would be disabled, that should have been disabled by their clinical standards.
Because everybody's broken in America, but if you fly overseas, your body stops breaking, you know.
It's weird, right? It's just weird. Yes, I love that. Well, what does it mean for our health if we don't face this, if we don't start looking at this and stop taking the whereas the low-hanging fruit, or the whereas the easiest is what we saw a lot of verbiage around the last few years. My heart ached as I saw how sick Americans really were, because that, I think, is what this last healthcare crisis showed us, is that we are compound problems. Right.
Well, so if we don't do anything, we're going to get worse. But if you look at something like, there's a good book called The 100-Year Lie, and that's kind of how what started, kind of how I practiced also with the Blue Zone book. And so the 100-Year Lie is like, we didn't have this epidemic, and then suddenly we have a sudden epidemic, right? 1950, we changed the way we process grain, sudden epidemic of gut problems. 1960, put estrogenic pesticides all over food, and sudden epidemic of estrogen problems. 1990s, put sugar, which is more addictive than crack cocaine, to sell more food in food, and sudden epidemic of thyroid problems. So we know what we did, when we did it, and why we did those things, but we don't care as a population, because it's highly profitable, and the people that have the money get to have the voice to tell you, here's the next solution to the thing that we just caused. So we are always hitting the bullseye on the wrong targets, right? So at this point, we are like the worst of the worst when it comes to quality of care and quality of life. And so we are one of the biggest, fattest, dumbest populations with the most anxiety and depression in the world. We have 3 out of every 4 Americans. Think about it. 3 out of every 4 is dealing with a chronic condition. 1 out of every 2 of those have multiple chronic conditions. And the reality is they all do. because they just don't admit what they have, or they don't really see of that 30 to 60 other things that they're just kind of used to, which is just now their new normal, but it's not okay. So if you look at something like how we came to where we are at this point, if you look at something like cancer, cancer rates 100 years ago was 1 in 8,000. We've always known about cancer. There's writings in the tombs of the mummies on papyrus paper about cancer, but it was really, really hard to get some cancer. We're Americans. We're going to get real good at cancer. And so
that's so bad. But it's true. Now it's like 1 in 3 people are touched by this, affected by something that is stealing lives.
Preventable. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, by 1970, so we learned in the 1800s that if you take coal tar and you rub it on the ears of rabbits in a lab setting, you can cause 100% cancer rates. The rest of the world says let's ban that. America says let's make everything you eat, drink, breathe, rub on your skin, and wear out of cancer-causing coal tar, right? We know that it causes those artificial colors will decrease brain neurite growth by 3,000% for yellow. Artificial color, blue is 5,000%. And then we see a sudden epidemic of learning disorders that come with those colors. Suddenly, everybody has ADHD and ADD and dyslexia and minimal brain dysfunction. And then by the 1970s, cancer became the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. So from Adam and Eve all the way to 1970, that's how long that took. But it only took 30 more years before it became 1 out of every 2 Americans. And then the World Health Organization predicted 10 years later that the cancer rates will be 1 out of every 100% for Americans born after 2010. Something that was absolutely rare, we can create it in at younger and younger ages. But when you look at the benzene in our food is cancer causing, the coal tar is cancer causing, the phthalates are cancer causing, the sunscreen is cancer causing. Well, of course we are the cancer causing population. That's exactly what we're doing. So in 2019, cancer became the leading cause of preventable death over smoking for the first time in history. First time.
Wow.
In 2006, the American diet became the leading cause of preventable death over smoking. It is now better. Yeah.
Or the SAD diet.
Yeah.
The SAD diet, Standard American Diet, stands for SAD, and it became the leading cause of death in our country, outdoing smoking rates.
Yeah.
That was
so your children are better off smoking cigarettes than to eat school lunches.
I believe that. I've seen a district lunch, and I am appalled time and time again that is a system. We just don't exist anymore. We don't.
Yeah.
The family exists there. But in witnessing that, I know we can do better. And the same thing I've seen for the long-term care with it, where my mother resided, the malnourishment rates, the high sodiums, there wasn't a lot of nourishment really in the food. It was salted cardboard, really. Particles of matter that had some seasoning on it. I don't know where we lost our food, but food is medicine, and that's where you and I cross over a lot. And I love that you can take us on that history tour, because it didn't happen overnight. And so we're not going to fix it overnight, but we can fix it, right? I heard you say 99.9% fixable. That means very few people have to stay in that chronic state.
We have those patients. They've been told by everybody, you're not going to reverse this. You're not going to reverse this. You have ulcerative colitis, you have eczema, you have asthma. It's going to be lifelong. But then within 6 to 14 weeks, 90% of people don't have that anymore. Well, we're genetically designed to heal. Our physiology is designed to heal. And literally, this is all health areas for Americans. I take a pen and I rub it on my skin. If I keep rubbing, it'll create a sore. If I never stop rubbing, it'll be a constant sore on my skin. And I will call that skin pen rubbing disease, right? And then I'll give you some antibiotics to make it better, and then we'll give you pain relievers because it's going to start hurting really bad. But what's the cure for it? Stop doing that.
Stop doing
right? And if you do that, no matter what you do, you put essential oils on there, if you take vitamins for that, it's going to heal all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you are genetically designed to heal. Our goal is to figure out what we're doing as Americans to do this and stop doing that. If you eat coal tar and you rub the cancer-causing, leukemia-causing, lymphoma-causing flammable part of gasoline on your skin as a sunscreen, you should get cancer. You should. It's not why do we have all this
cause the cancer.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Yeah.
One of my students years ago, there's probably like 50 students in the class, and he stood up and he's like, Dr. Garrett, everything causes cancer. I was like, well, no, everything that causes cancer, but all the things that don't cause cancer don't cause cancer. Stop causing cancer.
Stop doing the things that cause the cancer that stops the cancer.
That's right.
Right. And see, it's just that simple. We just need to stop doing some things. So if we need to stop doing some things, what do we need to stop doing when we are out here looking for expert advice on our health? And how do we go back and start doing this total inventory inside and reestablishing ourselves as the expert in the arena? And where do we go for empowerment with that?
Well, the key is Americans love gimmicks. We love the next gimmick that's going to make us all better.
I do.
But I'm always like, oh, the next book's like eat for your metabolic type, then your blood type. And I'm just like, I need to write a book that says just eat for your butt type, right? Like, you want a hamburger butt, pizza butt, taco butt?
I get asked a lot about, oh, you know about that diet, right? And I'm like, I actually don't know about any of them. I just know about real food, folks. That's all I know about is, apple a day keeps the doctor away. It was that simple. So I watched my grandfather eat a lot of bananas. I watched him cure himself from diabetes. He asked permission from his healthcare guides to give him more time. And those were VA professionals. So he was military history. So he found he had open-minded support and was able to advocate for himself. So, it does come down to sometimes we just aren't asking the right questions. We don't even know that we don't have to take that. They're just offering it, but you are still the expert in your health.
Yeah. So one of the ways you figure this out, because it's like, how do we get through all this complexity and really get to the true simplicity, right? So the easiest way, which is what I did, which is what do countries that don't have all this chronic disease do to live healthier, happier, longer, more productive lives? Well, that's called the blue zone. And then there's 9 things, Dan Butner wrote a book about the blue zone. So those are those countries. And then he said, what are the 9 things? He found 9 things that they all did in common. And that was part of their lifestyle. And then when you read that, you're just like, oh, so they eat healthy and then they move a lot and then they get sunshine and activity. They get purposeful movement and then they have faith and then they have, and again, all their faiths were different, but they had some type of faith. And then they had kind of mindful practices. And you're like, yeah, that's the most simple answer, right? So
it was that easy. We just had to eat well and be part of the community and have our spiritual practices met, and it kind of folded in, and we got outside and got our sunshine, and so our vitamins were replenished by nature itself. Right. I've read a lot about the blue zones. I am very attracted to the lifestyles that they live. I know there's the one community, I believe in Okinawa, with the largest number of centennial women still there, which is dynamic. And then, there's the one in the Mediterranean lifestyle. There's one here in the United States. And they do have faith-based, more faith-based. Loma Linda, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Loma Linda? Yeah. And it's just fascinating because you're like, oh, they just don't live a hard life. They do the movement. It's not intentional exercise. It's just lifestyle.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's really how I believe we should be living, probably to be the most efficient humans and well balanced or harmonious inside.
Yeah. And you look at those 9 things and you start to realize the American population is not about any of those things. None of them. Like we're like, you got centennials that are still active doing stuff. And here we're like, well, grandma, don't do stuff because you're going to break a hip. Well, you're not breaking a hip, you're just malnourished and inactive. And so the things that we need to be doing, we actually teach people not to do,
Yeah.
And
we're
so
backwards. Darn
there's little things like the average European walks 10,000 steps a day. The average, Kansan or walks about 2,500 steps a day. Like we're just walking from places to sit down.
I heard
of exercise.
We don't eat any fruits.
Yeah. No, the average American eats 1 fruit or vegetable a day. Like back in the '84, the American cancer was becoming a sudden epidemic. The American Cancer Association said, look, if y'all would just eat 5 handfuls of fruits and vegetables a day, just 5 handfuls, you could reverse 85 to 100% of all cancers, even 75% in smokers. And then Americans were like, we're not doing any of that.
So
we'll
hard.
One.
We'll give you one.
Yeah,
I know.
And that's potato chips and fries.
Mind-blowing. It's simple, but it's not, because it really does come down to going back and reestablishing your practices and your habits. And so it is an accountability act. And we recognize that habit making is hard, but it's not. So it's worthy. It's worth doing because our health is worth the investment to do that. So,
yeah, and then you're the role model for your children. Like the whole idea of like, we're not martyrs as parents. We need to be the healthiest, happiest, most balanced person so that they watch what it looks like to be that, even if they don't do it. But that's living a life worth living. That's the first thing you got to say is, like, do I want to live a life worth living? Because most people are living a lifestyle that's inconsistent with life and longevity, but I don't want to suffer from it. So they take medications and supplements so that they can take the batteries out of the fire alarm so they don't have the fire alarm hurting their ears while they eat Big Macs and don't move.
Right.
Like, it's just very simple kind of things. Like
they mute the symptoms so that they don't have to be irritated by them because they know already. Right. The alarm is sounding off, and we're all just time bombs. So at some point we all face that catastrophic moment where it's live or die inside of our own bodies. Because the end game is the same for all of us, but how we get there and the quality of life that we get to enjoy because we are treating ourselves so well. I have a lot of people that are my age, hearing them say things like, oh, I'm just getting older. And blaming their age for their ailments is disheartening, because as I've gotten older, I feel like I'm getting stronger. I'm dropping off a lot of the inflammation as I improve and take on more lifestyle choices that support that. So, and you've helped me with so many of those, just simple things like just a glass of water with minerals every day. It's not that hard. It's just a glass of water and I add some minerals. And now my body gets something that it probably wouldn't have unless I went and stood in the soil, barefoot for an hour and maybe tried to absorb some of that stuff or rub, something on intentionally. But what are some best practices? Like, what are some things that we can do just to facilitate this going forward?
So for the most part, simple things like being very mindful and very purposeful in what we're doing. So and the question becomes, like, when you still, first you kind of feel like, I'm going to be enough. You got to decide if you're enough so you can feel better, right? And then know everything's a choice. And then when you start thinking about choices, say, do I feel healthier or happier when I eat this? Or do I feel worse when I eat this? And what do I want? And so, people often are that mentality of just like, well, I've done pretty good. I deserve a cookie.
Ooh,
Well, do cookies make you feel good? well, momentarily, but then I feel awful. Well, don't you deserve to feel good, energetic, healthy, happy, balanced, right? Clear brain, you know, you can eat and sleep and poo and pee and have energy and clear thoughts all day. Like, that's possible, but it's all these things. So, like, the journey to health and wellness is not a war that you can win or lose. It's a constant daily dialogue between you, your lifestyle, and your food. So, when I do this, do I feel healthier and happier and more energetic? Or do I feel worse? And then start making, I mean, everything's dialectical. So the first thing is you become aware, right? People aren't even aware of how that food makes them feel. Louis C.K., the famous comedian, he said, people now base their day off what they just ate. So they're like, man, I'm going to eat butt today. I'm so focused. And then I'm going to eat this cereal. And then I'm just like, I'm going to take a nap. Right?
Yeah.
So being very mindful and starting to become really aware of, how does this relationship make me feel? Is it a life worth living? Is this diet make me feel good? Is that worth it? Right? And so when you look at things like, well, I love cheese and I love sugar and I love it, that's all crack and morphine to the brain. You're just a food drug addict. Do you want to be a drug addict or do you want to be happy? And so I would start with like the Blue Zones as a book. And just, if you could say, well, tell me what the world's healthiest, happiest populations do without gimmicks and nonsense, and just start implementing those things. And then look at, you know, if you look at even animals, so animals in the wild are some of the biggest, strongest animals. They don't follow any of our food rules.
Well, we're afraid of them, so clearly they're the biggest, strongest animal. What are they doing?
So their stuff is simple, but if you look at what, there was a thing on NPR the other day on Science Friday, but it said the number 1 and number 2 medications for pets who used to be wild animals is antidepressants and obesity medications.
I'm sorry, pets on antidepressants? I'm not a pet owner at the time, so I'm unfamiliar with the mental health crisis of our animal population.
Okay. But if you take animals and you put them in your setting and you eat and drink and live like they do, or they eat and drink and live like you do, they're going to get the same consequences.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our animals are mirroring our lifestyles, and we're keeping them inside. We're not going outside and taking them for walks like we should. We're giving them food that is processed. So they're no longer getting a wild diet, you know, a forage diet. They're sedentary because they don't have to work for anything. I've heard people say, oh, heaven forbid, if the cat ever got out, it wouldn't survive. It wouldn't, because no one's going to bring it its meal. So yeah, that is a really great point. I love that you highlighted that. If we want to look at the real healthcare crisis, look at our animals mirroring us, and they're now on antidepressants too.
And they were apex predators.
These are predators that are now like, my emotions can't handle it. I need some help. I get it. Life is hard, you know? We're all just trying to do the best we can.
Yeah.
One decision at a time. I always say that, friend. I always say that it's every decision I get to make to nourish my health is a chance to tell myself how worthy I am, how much I deserve to feel better. And so, you know, it's not that we don't live a perfect lifestyle. You know, my children and I are very much privy to grabbing things in the drive-thrus too. But there's times when we really weigh our options and we look at that and we go, but we're going to drink the water instead of the soda because we need the protein from the burger, but we don't need the saturated fats from the fries, and we don't need the sugars from this. And so we're going to drink this instead. And so we will make compromises along the way. And they are watching us, and I watch my kids do that, you know, and they don't fight me anymore on it. And they hear me when I tell them that me caring for their health is a love language.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you the sweetest thing with my daughter. I have four daughters, and then the 2 youngest are twins. And I'm always just like talking about why we eat certain things, why we stay away from certain things, and how this color decreases our brain growth, and this one causes cancer, and you know. And my middle daughter, well, she was just like, why can't we ever have anything? You know, why do we have to do this stuff? Why do we have to be so strict? And my twins were like, Dad does that because he loves us. I was like, oh, that's so wonderful, because in a few years you won't say that. Like,
how good it feels to be seen.
Right,
well,
right.
I keep cherishing those moments where my children have the aha moments. I know my youngest had that when her body healed itself from appendicitis this past year, and I think our whole community was like, wow. And when that surgeon came in and endorsed us like that, because we'd done so many things in giving her time and patience and nourishment, and we didn't have a diagnosis, but we were letting her body listen to its, like, she was listening to herself. She was conveying what she needed. Many of you had your hands on her at some point in healing touch spaces, and then ultimately to have even that side of the medical community come out and go, whatever you did, it was right, because her body actually healed itself. And we went in to do an intervention, and we just didn't have to. And that blew our minds. So there's something you guys are doing right. And so I was like, yeah, I want to empower that. And so that's why I started kind of this segment, Real Health Right Now, because there are things we can do. And I'll tell you, even the day after she came out of recovery, it's a testimony in itself, but she came through being unscathed. No cutting happened. She was untouched. But as she came through recovery, because they'd still given her quite a bit of interventions that her body was not used to, and she was having to recover from that, and her gut was having to recover from that. And they offered her things that I was appalled, I won't lie. When I come in and I see my child has a container of Fruit Loops in the local hospital after we just came through a near-death experience, and I'm like, you're going to give her the same exact thing that likely broke. Right. Yeah. Potentially. I don't know. My kid's pretty well-rounded. But I just look at that, and so I had come in with a little bag of my goodies, and I offered both to her, and she immediately accepted my offering. So they're wise. They're wise beyond our abilities at that age, I'm sure. But we're going to get back to that place, because I think we're on our way to the best place for our health, on our way back to that place. And I think that you're right on time. So to support that, I'm so grateful for you.
Well, I appreciate you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, friend. I look forward to having more conversations with you. And I encourage everyone to check out the Blue Zones, because it really is dynamic. The information is there. We just have to reach out and grab it. The examples are there to lead our best life, and the support is there to help us to navigate and get there. So like you were there for us. Thank you, Dr. Garrett.
Of course.
I appreciate you. Okay, until next time, friends, we will see you on Real Health Right Now. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, it's Joey again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the show. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. We'd love to hear your comments too. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an episode from the Reality Practice Network. As I mentioned before the show, I wanted to extend an exclusive offer to you, the viewers of the Reality Practice Network. For all of you watching this video, you're undoubtedly experiencing an awakening and are searching for more explanation into the experiences you're having. Now is the time to explore who and what you truly are. For a limited time, you can now work one-on-one with your show host. Click the link in the description box below to start your journey, or learn more by going to myrealitypractice.com/ascension and let your ascension begin. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today?